everybody. Welcome back to Tales from the Tavern. I hope everyone here is doing well. Sorry we're a little late. We had some tech gremlins. I lost my internet for a few minutes, and then Ryan lost his audio for a few minutes, and it's been fun. But, as Jason said in the chat, that's how you know it's a stream, is when the tech gremlins are on board, you know everybody's here. So it's all good. Welcome back. Welcome to the second monthly version of Tales from the Tavern. We're excited to be back and be here. As you can see, the tavern has gotten a new look. So that's very exciting. So we've got a whole new window, courtesy of Lot Evenstar, aka Ty Burris. So he redid that for us this past week, so that was very nice. And we've got a great group of guests here with us tonight. So I am going to let everyone introduce themselves, tell a little about who they are and where you can find them on social media and anything they've got going on or want to share or anything like that. So Run DMG, also known as Ryan, we're going to start with you. Tell us about yourself.
I'm not prepared. Hi, I'm Ryan. You can also go by Run DMG. I have a podcast called Dice Populi, and then I decided to start posting all the memes that I make for Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop RPGs on TikTok, and it kind of blew up. I also post on Instagram, and I do the odd occasional like DM help guide thing. Just hot off of doing a fundraiser for the Trevor Project. We raised over $2,200. I can't remember I have to check the exact. That's the thing for today. But it was just a huge success, so I'm really happy to be here. And I think this might be my 5th time on the program.
Are we up to that many? Wow.
4th or 5th?
Yeah.
I think so. So I'm just happy to be back and happy that this show is back on the air.
Yeah, happy to have you. Welcome. Yeah, I didn't realize it had been that many times, but in retrospect, yeah, it probably has been.
Been a few, yeah.
Yep, yeah, and congrats on the fundraiser. That's fantastic. For anyone who didn't know, Ryan was doing a fundraiser for the Trevor Project, which is a fantastic organization. If you're not familiar with them, highly suggest you give them a look. They do suicide prevention work and really, really important stuff that they do. So definitely check them out.
They're amazing charity.
Yeah,
so
they really are.
Recommend supporting them.
Yes, yes. Next, we will go both to Tom and Bodhi, a.k.a. Homie and the Dude. Welcome. Thank you for coming all the way from across the sea.
Of course. It's our absolute pleasure. Thank you for having us back. We really appreciate you, Luna. And guys, thanks for allowing us to come and chat with y'all as well. We appreciate all the rest of you guys here with us as well.
Should we split this up?
Yeah, Judy,
I'll just do a quick intro of myself, and then you can give the old Homie and the Dude spiel.
Go for
it. So I'm Tom. I am the father, and probably I guess I am the more senile version of the Homie and the Dude partnership. But yeah, I am mostly focused on the behind the scenes marketing and logistics part of the team, and I get in front of the camera here and there.
I'm Bodhi. I'm the sun half, as you could probably tell by my beauty and lack of wrinkles compared to him.
Give it time.
Yeah, give it time. So we're Homie and the Dude, father and son, TTRPG, and MMA team. If you enjoy any of those two things, please come check us out. At the moment, we are hoping to bring you guys kind of what is our love song to the TTRPG community after, you guys gave us amazing games. We're trying to give you guys something back with a Kickstarter we're releasing called Sky Zephyrs. It's going to bring brand new rules for vehicle combat and movement in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, hopefully taking it to a whole new level and forever changing it is our hope. With that as well, we'll be bringing out our custom vehicle builder application where you will be able to, with a couple of clicks, generate your very own vehicles for Dungeons & Dragons 5th editions from customizable parts and things like that. So if any of that kind of interests you, we'd appreciate you guys checking that out. But otherwise, yeah, just super stoked to be here with you guys. And it will be covering airships, space, and naval. I just wanted to drop that last bit in there.
That's very cool. I know, on top of Ryan's being an ocean themed, nautical themed podcast, I know of a few others that do similar, so I'm sure that it would be very cool for all those people that want it. Next, we have joining us for the first time, Jacob, who is with Accessible Games. Jacob, tell us a little about you.
Hi, thanks for having me. Like I said, my name is Jacob Wood. I'm from Accessible Games. We're probably best known for our games Cypunk and Survival of the Able, and for Accessible Gaming Quarterly, which is a quarterly zine that we publish about accessibility and disabilities in the tabletop space. I'm also currently working with Dale from Wormworks Publishing on doing some stuff for Limitless Quest, which is an upcoming adventure series that he's doing for his Limitless Heroics and Limitless Champions line of 5e products. So, yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Very excited to have you on and learn a little more about what you do. And then last but definitely not least, we have Andrew Kolb joining us. Andrew, tell us a little about yourself.
Hi. Okay, yeah, I'm Andrew Kolb. I mean, most of the time I'm an illustrator and an author, but I guess why I'm here tonight is because some of that authoring and illustrating has been for a couple of books. Oh yeah, perfect. I was going to hold mine up too, but I did.
It's over in my stack.
I've done 2 books so far. So one based on Neverland, and then the second based on Oz, and currently working on a third. So hopefully that will come together. But public domain settings for 5e, but also I think somewhat system agnostic for other settings as well. Or at least that's my hope. Like if I hear someday that someone is running Blades in the Dark in Oz, then that's my dream. But until then, I'm content with 5e. But that's me.
I'm not gonna lie. So my significant other and I are toying with the idea of playing Oz with Blades in the Dark. So
He and I may have also, they and I may have also been talking about that.
Yeah, you may have put the idea out there to him, and
just trying to manifest my dreams coming true. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever want to sit in with us for a session,
that'd be my dream. Truly my dream.
Yeah, if you haven't had the chance to do that yet, Andrew also did an interview for the website shadowmain.com, SHADOMAIN, where Jason had the opportunity to interview Andrew a little more one-on-one, and Andrew got to share some of that, those fun little tidbits. So check that out if you get the chance. Awesome. Well, thank you so much all for being here. So to the way the stream works, if you have not been here before, which I don't think there's many of you, but just in case, everything that we ask comes from questions that you guys ask in chat. So please feel free to drop your questions for any of our guests here in the chat. I've got a moderator that's hanging out who will make sure that we get all of the questions seen, and we will give everybody the opportunity to talk about it and bat some of that stuff around. So yeah, it'd be great. Also, to all of our guests, if you have questions for each other, by all means, in the green room we were already having all kinds of conversations, we want to pick your brain about this and that and the other thing. So my moderator's I'm just a moderator, what the heck. So hopefully everybody can still hear me, because I can see that my camera is frozen, but I don't really know why. But it is. So here we go. It'll be fun. All right, I'm going to start off with my favorite icebreaker question for all of you. So if you've been here before, you may have answered this, but that's okay. So when you're playing at a physical table with actual physical dice in your hands, do your dice have to match?
I'll jump in and just say, when as a GM or DM.
Oh no.
Looking at the, yeah, I think it did went down.
It did, and now I'm back.
Oh no, it's all over the place now, though.
I know. Oh. I'll fix this. You guys talk. I'll fix it. It'll be fine.
Yeah. So matching dice.
Wait. No, do you want me to say it now, or do you want me to wait till we're?
No. By all means, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, no. As a GM and as a DM, I'm sure you guys know this. To murder players, you got to have lots of dice, and it's very hard unless you're buying one set of dice that all match. You're gonna be, you're gonna need multiple sets of dice.
Oh, I see. So if you're rolling like
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 17D whatever, there's no
Mhm.
way you're gonna have the
so-
same dice.
So you're saying there's a practical consideration, which
Yeah.
is if I have a multiple need of like one particular like D6 or D10 or whatever,
Yeah,
then
exactly.
I'm gonna have to pull from all those.
Exactly.
But well, okay, so let's take it to another level. If there isn't the practical need, would you just reach for
Another one of the same.
two of the same? Let's say you're playing a D6 game and you're rolling like either pairs of D6s or 3 D6s at a time. Do all those D6s have to match?
I like it different. Well, what about you guys? What are you guys saying?
Yeah, so I'm legally blind, so matching dice doesn't really matter to me. When I grab
That's fair.
my app, that'll roll whatever random number I want it to. And oftentimes I'll use fudge dice if I'm rolling physical dice. I would play a lot of fudge or fate, and those are very tactile. But I could care less what color they are. I've got fistfuls of them, and as long as I can feel what I'm rolling, doesn't matter to me.
So I have a follow-up, Jacob.
Sure.
You mentioned the tactile part of it. Do they have
Yeah.
to have tactile similarity, like as far as size or texture or any of that?
That's a really good question. So, especially with fudge dice, there are two key varieties. There's your what used to be called just fudge dice, and then there's the fate dice that Evil Hat had put out. They're very different in terms of how they feel and how they roll. And again, I don't really particularly care. I think, generally speaking, I find the fate dice a little bit easier to feel, and so I do grab those more often than not. But if I were to just reach into a bag and pull out a fistful of dice, I don't get too picky about it.
Is that based on material? Like, do you prefer a plastic versus a metal
Good
set?
question.
That is a good question.
I love a good stone die. I've got some
okay,
jade
yeah.
dice that are some
Ooh.
pipped D6s that are made out of jade. Those are my favorite dice. And absolutely,
Very
I'll always
schmancy.
roll those when I need 2d6.
Cool.
Oh yeah.
I can picture those. Did they have a bit of weight to them? When you
They
feel
do.
it?
They're nice and
Yeah.
heavy, and they've got a nice clacky sound to them.
Yeah, there's
They
something
have-
about that sound, isn't it?
They
Yeah.
have like porcelain dice now too that have
Wow.
like kind of cracked, so they fill it in with like dye. But supposedly they have like great like hand feel. They feel like they're like very smooth and they clack really good. I have yet to grab any, but I've been thinking about it.
I also have a set of gemstone ones that are like really, really nice as well. And like again, I'm always afraid to like roll them in anything like even like in the dice box that I have. I'm like, I gotta roll that so gently against that back wall, Bodhi. Like half power right now, half power.
For my dice, I actually, because I run a lot of games for like new players, I actually I went to a site where you could buy literally individual die and color coded them. So I bought like 5 or 10 like purple D20s and then like red D6s, blue D8s type thing. Because I find at the table, especially for newcomers, it's tricky to be like, which one am I supposed to roll? So I tend to go with color a lot as well. And then it's also just like nice organizing them, at least at the middle of the table, to have like these little pools of different colors. So I guess yes, they do all match, but in a different way, like not in just a set of one of each one.
That's
Cool.
super clever. I love that.
I don't know if this is a thing for other games, but there was this old TSR game called Dragon Strike, and it's a board game that's kind of loosely based on second edition D&D, and they do that where they have like the D10 is a blue die, the D12 is a black die, the D8 is I think a white die or something, and they do that specifically so that when you're playing with a new player, you can be like, oh, grab the black die or grab the blue die. You don't have to tell them, well, grab
Oh,
the
great.
D12. Yeah, it's super clever.
That's awesome.
That's good design.
Yeah.
I think typically speaking, matching dice. Like I've been using the same like dice set. I have tons of dice, but I've been using this one dice set for most of my games for probably the last like 2 years, ever since I got the dice set. But when I do get a new character, I tend to buy a dice set for them, and I'll use that.
Fun.
it's it's a nice excuse to spend like depending like somewhere between like $8 and $30 depending. I'm not that addicted yet where I've gone to like I've not yet like gone to a dice maker and like I would like some custom dice. I'm not yet at the point of spending like a couple $100 on it, so I'm not that bad, but I'm getting there slowly.
Yeah,
for sure.
I've never done that either. Like, there's been a few times I was at like PAX East one year, and I was like, oh, I really like this set of dice. Now, of course, they were from Level Up, and so that alone is cost prohibitive. But I was like, oh, I really like these dice. They were metal, and they made like a cool jingly sound when you rolled them. They were $175, and I was like, nope, that is not happening.
There's been a couple. I follow a lot of dice makers and kind of friends with some dice makers on TikTok. And every time I see them make something, I'm just like, God, I want it, but also I don't want to spend $300.
I know, and I get it. Like, I totally get why they can charge that much, especially if they're handmade, because it's a lot of work to learn how to do it and make sure you get it right and, all of it. But, man, yeah, that's out of my price range. And everybody knows I love dice.
And they have, like, the soft, like, liquid core dice now.
Oh,
No, those are so cool.
They're the dice maker that I follow, I'm blanking on the name right now, but there was a Tide Pod in them.
oh wow.
And it was like fist size too, and I was like, God, it's easily $300. I can't. I'm gonna hold off. I want it, but I can't.
The closest I've ever come to buying handmade dice is I've backed 2 Kickstarters from Greenleaf Geek, and that's like the closest I've ever come. And they're still like, they weren't super expensive ones because I can't afford like the sharp edge ones, even though aesthetically I think those are much nicer looking than the round edge ones. But like the last one that I backed were the what'd you call them? The perihedrals, the cat ones. They have little cats on the inside of them, and they're super stinking cute. But like, I was like, man, if I tried to get somebody to make me a set of these, they'd be ridiculously expensive. I don't know if anybody saw them. You can't really, if I hold it up, you can't really see it, but there's a little black cat in this one, so.
Oh, neat. You know what I love, Ryan, is so when you say you buy a new set of dice for when you're creating a new character, how much do the dice have to, because I try to identify with that type of thing, but not necessarily with dice. I try to, maybe it's a physical little prop that I have or something like that. Like I have a character that I use a toothpick for, that type of thing. So do you connect the feel or the color or the size of the dice with what that character would own, or is it just a more of a random thing, like I'm just going to get some new set of dice and I'm going to connect that, I'm going to link that to this character?
So I usually buy the dice after I've come up with the character. So I try to be like, what would the character buy? Sometimes I already have the dice. Like I've been gifted a couple of sets here and there, so I have some like nautical themed dice that have like little fishes in them. So like if I were to play a maybe something more nautical, like somebody that was like a sea elf or something like that, I have that unlocked. But for my necromancer character that I play in a campaign, I got red and black.
Nice.
And then for like this really fancy magus that I was playing in a Pathfinder game, I got these really nice metal, super mirror finish, blue inlay, like very schmancy, very heavy, like kind of ostentatious, because that's exactly what that character would have gotten, like showboat all the way. So I do kind of tailor it.
Yeah, I just love that. I've never even thought of that. That's a really cool additional connection to your character through the game.
I was also going to say, based on your whole like, I want the dice, but I shouldn't spend the money problem. You can always do the whole like, hey man, like if you want to send me some of your dice, and I'll do a little video about it. Like I love your dice. Like
I have done that.
Like
I was gonna say you probably have the TikTok following to pull that off. So
I have done that. So there was, and I use these dice a lot too. But there is a couple of dice makers that I've gone to with that proposition. I've done giveaways and stuff for them. I recently worked with Libris Arcana, who donated to my charity fundraiser. So I did a couple of TikToks about the Libris Arcana. They do this thing where they ship you basically a subscription service. So you sign up and they will send you a fresh limited edition set of dice every single month. And they're usually like I've gotten one so far, and they're nice dice too. They're like resin dice. They got a lot of color to them. They've got like, they're very shiny. They're really cool. So I like them so much that I am still a subscriber.
Nice. Can I throw another wrinkle into this dice consideration? So I'm mostly like pretty obsessive with just order in my life. So I would normally pick matching dice, but if I'm rolling hot with a particular die, that one might just knock out some other ones, and I might keep that one. You know what I mean? So how is everyone with your consideration of hot dice that may just need to linger on that little bit more, where normally you might pick some other dice?
I'm one of those people that, like, if one die in the set has to go, the whole set has to go. So if one die's rolling hot and the other ones are not, I'm going to keep them because I've got one doing really well. So
I've definitely done that before. Like when you're on a hot streak and you know it, like I've kept a dice, like especially if it's like have to roll advantage, or maybe you're doing like multiple dice and one of these D6s or whatever is always popping up a 6. Like, yes, that is staying in the mix. I've done that.
We had a game that we played, and it's a D4 based game, and Bodhi had a set of dice that you got for Christmas.
They were in soap.
They were in soap, so we referred to this one D4 as the Soapy 4, and then we had like a range of maybe about 5 or 6, maybe more, 7 or 8 different other types of D4s. This Soapy 4, I don't know if it was like weighed unevenly, but it just continued to roll 4s, like in an uncanny, unbelievable way. So if I was ever in trouble, I would reach for the Soapy 4.
Yeah.
to your dismay.
Yeah. Very often, to my dismay.
that's funny. All right, well, we've gotten a couple questions from chat, so let's dive into some of those. So the first one that we have is from the Ink Den, and they would like to know, what is the most fun homebrew item you have found or made?
Oh. Okay.
I mean, I would say both my books are homebrew.
That's fair.
So I'm very thrilled to play with those. And I've had lots of fun with both settings. So that's my answer. Maybe it's a cheat, but it's genuine.
Is that? But okay, wait. When you said item, I thought you meant like in-game item.
Sure.
I didn't realize we were talking about like homebrew third-party content.
Well, I did too.
Yeah. Chat, can you clarify?
Sure,
That
let's do either or both.
Okay. That is, I would say, so in-game, I seem to just keep giving players things that I think are cool and then just bite me in my ass. And that just seems to be the consistent issue that I seem to have. So I've got 2 off the top of my head. One was a bottle with an airship in it that the airship was removed fairly quickly and creatures started going in there pretty soon thereafter. And that was not my original intention. And yeah, they were just, that
There were some important NPCs that got stuck in there as well.
Yeah, it was a bit of a mess. And then the other one was I gave someone a pen, like Percy Jackson style, that they could click and it would turn to like a giant mole. And they use it now as a permanent lockpick. So they just put it in a keyhole, click the button, and just rip the door to shreds, basically. So that's their go-to lockpicking system now for getting into anything that I put in front of them, which is again another one of my own fucking problems that I did it to myself. Yeah, but those would be in-game items, fun ones that I've had.
My favorite one that I've done, it was like a +1 sword. I wrote this out on Reddit because I thought it was such a great idea. This was years ago, but it was a +1 or like a +2 sword. But every time that you hit a monster with it, it would subtract like D4 gold from your bank, like basically from your pockets. Wow. And the second you ran out of money, it would be cursed, and it would actively it would basically hold the balance against you, and as the balance grew, so would the negative penalty towards your like to hit and damage rolls. And I thought it was like something really fun you'd give like a very low level party before they basically become like walking banks with infinite funds. But I always like the idea of that kind of like there's a switch at some point that character is gonna be like, as I'm telling him 17 hits, and all of a sudden a 17 doesn't hit, and I'm like, oh no. Also, after the battle, your pockets feel really light. I love that.
Nice. That's a badass one.
I think for me, in 3rd edition D&D, I created an item that was for kind of a silly campaign called beer goggles. And the longer you wore them, the higher other people's charisma appeared to you.
That is how they
That's
work, isn't it?
good.
That is literally
That's
how they work.
freaking
That's
good.
great.
That's freaking good.
Yeah, so it was a fun little kind of antics. I
Love that.
think that's the one that stands out to me.
I have,
Love it.
you actually gave me this one. I have a device that Bodhi named the Watch of Time Turning. And there was a kind of an encounter, a heist, and kind of rescue encounter that we were just up against it. We were losing in many ways, and it looked like it could have ended up in a TPK. It literally was not looking good. And certainly some of the PCs were in big trouble. So I could click on this Watch of Time Turning, my Tortle character, and reverse time, which would then reverse a couple of the actions that happened before, which were like redos on rolls that literally
essentially redo a saving throw, redo a check, basically.
Yeah,
It's just
Nice.
a reroll.
and it was super handy to us, where I saved my character saved a PC, one of our fellow PCs, that was like falling into a swarm of baddies, and then we had an NPC as well that actually died. But what we realized is every time I turned back time, it was creating a parallel universe for us. So we had
that was again me thinking cool ideas and then not realizing the ramifications of some of the shit that I create. But that's kind of my favorite thing about it. Do you know what I mean? I kind of love when I create something, I'm like, this is going to be used in the most mundane way, and then I'm always surprised by how players go about using it. I think that's personally one of my favorite things about D&D is just me thinking it's going to go one way and then just being like, wow, that did not go how I expected it all. Incredible. I think that's one of my favorite things for sure. What about you, Andrew? Have you got an item? Is there an item in Neverland or Oz that's your favorite?
So if we're going specific object, then it's relatively recent, or like been recently introduced to my main group. But they found like a magnetized shield, like a shield that essentially like from inside you could magnetize one side. So if you're like struck by like a metal object, or like if they missed with a metal object, then they would have to make a save, and if not, then that becomes stuck to the shield. So I'm assuming it's going to get used in ways that it has to be. It's going to get used in ways that I'm not planning for. So far, it's just been like an advantage in combat, but I'm sure they will use it to somehow scale a metal tower at some point.
I was just thinking that. I was like, Tom Cruise your way up a tower with that
shield? Absolutely. Yeah. So that one stands out as not necessarily something where shenanigans have happened, but I'm certain they will. So yeah, magnet shield, that's it for me.
Love it so much. Luna, do you have one?
I do. So I created you know those butter cookies that come in the tin and you never know if it's going to have cookies or sewing supplies in it?
Yeah.
So I created a magic item based on that. And it's basically you can open it once a day and you have to roll on a table and it will tell you what kind of crafting supply you get. Or if you roll, you have to roll a D100. If you get between like a 96 and 100, you actually get cookies. And the cookies will heal you for 2 points of healing or something like that. But that's probably the only thing I've made. It was totally intended to be super goofy, and it was exactly that. So yeah, it was one of those things that I was like, that should be an item. I need to make that an item. So I literally just went through like the D&D spell components list. I went through the Pathfinder spell components list, picked just random crap. Some of the stuff that's in it is actually useful stuff, and some of it's pocket glitter.
Nice.
So
that's the stuff though that ends up getting used in ways where you don't expect. Like when you introduce, this ship is full of crates of chilled butter. You're like, oh, what are they going to do with this? And then the rest of the campaign is, how do we use all this butter? It just becomes the adventure of, well, if we grease this, then we'll be able to light it on fire, and then that will give us the adventure. It ends up becoming problems like the whole when you're a hammer, everything becomes a nail. When you only have butter, all solutions become butter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm looking at it now, so because I want to see what else I threw in there, because I don't even remember what some of the items were. Let's see. Yeah, some of them are a daisy chain that never wilts.
Oh, that's
Okay.
nice.
I don't know what you're going to do
That's
with that. A
awesome.
jar of glue, a pair of
Oh.
scissors, 25 popsicle sticks, a pocket watch. Oh, that's where that went. Let's see. A sheet of gold star stickers,
Nice.
pine cones, tree resin, diamond dust.
And what sort of setting is this item located in? Like, what is the kind of like the environment that this is around?
So basically, the way that I wrote it is it can only be found in the attics of old houses or occasionally tucked into closets. They can't be purchased. They just exist. They're created by grandmother type beings across the world. And only a special type of individual can create one. This is not a skill that any party member would be able to have.
That's
Luna,
awesome.
you probably have it already, but if you don't, I'd add 2 different sized socks that were knitted, one in green and one in orange or something
Oh,
like
that's
that.
a good idea. I do
Pretty
have
solid, yeah.
let's see. I do have a pair of wooden knitting needles in here, and then somewhere
There we
else
go.
I have a ball of pink yarn.
There you go.
There we go. There's the follow-up.
So you could, in theory, like knit something with whatever you get. But yeah, you can. Let's see. There's always something in there. Let's see. What is it? Oh, you can't store items in it, so it's not like a bag of holding. You can't like put anything in. It's already fully stocked. There's no room to put anything in, but there's always something in there no matter what you take out. Opening it more than once per day will result in it appearing empty. So, yeah.
I love that
That's-
item.
That's
awesome.
freaking awesome. Yeah. You know, Ryan, actually, your dagger reminded me. I gave something similar to the Sky Pirate King in our world. He has a Tonto that is that essentially just when he stabs players, they drop money. Like I think it's like 100 gold just dropped, and that's like one of his like 2 weapons that he uses. So he's just constantly like
Cleaning up. He's
just
just cleaning
cleaning
up.
up. in coin
Oh
number,
my
yeah,
god.
so, yeah.
Absolute nightmare for a player. That for a GM to give that like be absolute, because then it's just a rogue just stabbing everybody all the time.
Oh yeah.
Chat's coming up with stuff now. Bag of beans that give different effects based on a D100 or a D1000. And then somebody followed up saying, or let the player narrate what happens, but only the third word that they actually use comes true.
Nice. Love it.
We had a user submitted item. Instead, there's the deck of many things. This user submitted item was the eggs of many things.
Oh, gosh.
Oh god.
And they got inserted. I was pretty early in the campaign, I think. And most of them are pretty mild things. I think there was you can increase your stats a little bit. There's another one where it summons something pretty minor. There was one where it's it summons a full-sized pyramid with mummies and all this other stuff inside of it that basically it spawns a full dungeon. Of course, when we use it, that is the thing that happens, and it completely redirects our campaign a little bit.
Well, we
the
had a
eggs
similar
of
thing
everything.
with your bottle. Basically, someone captured a bone dragon. So a bone dragon is like this massive thing that they carry around with them. So if we're in any situation where we are confronted by, anyone of any substance, we have a bone dragon that we can release on them immediately. Well, we can release it. We don't know if it's going to necessarily attack them, but it's probably going to cause damage somewhere. It could actually turn itself on us. And
Yeah, it's for me to decide.
My
Just a
group,
bottle of chaos.
my group loves to whatever they find. And I'm sure everyone's run into this. Whatever creature they find, trying to turn it into a pet.
Yeah.
And I was recently talking on a Discord channel about what to do if they come across an infant crocodile in Neverland. So I essentially wrote out for them this basic setup, which I've done with my players of it takes a couple weeks just for it to not instantly attack you. So in training that, then that's the base level. Then you can have to work on training it to recognize your allies as also allies to this creature. So that way it doesn't just become a new party member. It's still that, you're talking about with the bone dragon, a threat of, yes, this could help us, or this could really work against us. And that's kind of the nature of raising wild animals. I've read the news now. That is something that will happen. So
I've heard about that with chimpanzees. It doesn't go well sometimes.
yeah.
Okay, let's see. We've got Let's see. We've got another question from chat. This one comes from Jason, and he says, if you created a brand new TTRPG system, what would it be like? Themes, genre, etc.
Oh, well, that's easy because I do that all the time. So I wrote Survival of the Able, which is based on mechanics from Fudge and Fate, but it's completely its own system. And in that game, first of all, it's a survival horror game set in the Middle Ages with zombies, but all characters are disabled. But in order to get away from the trope that in a game, disabilities are just penalties to buy off, there are no like game mechanics associated with disabilities. So you might have your senses are different traits, different skills, because in the real world, our senses come in a spectrum, right? So I'm legally blind, but I'm not totally blind. I can see a little bit. So my sight might be represented by that somehow. And then I added in some different skills and qualities and things of that nature to really round out a character without specifically saying, well, you are deaf, so you cannot do this, or you can only do that. And then I throw everybody into a setting where zombies are trying to, it's there's a zombie plague. It's during the Black Death, and anybody who dies of the plague rises again as a zombie. And then what do you do? How do you survive in that sort of situation where the people who have been taking care of you at your almshouse have succumbed to the plague, and now it's just a handful of people who were originally cast aside by society and said, you need to go live off on your own because you're disabled and we don't want to deal with you. Well, now, what sort of unique techniques do you come up with to try to survive in that situation? So, I guess if I were to create a system, it would again be along those lines where you're really trying to think outside the box. Is what I love about game design in general, is coming up with new ways of looking at old things. So yeah, that's what I do.
Have you thought of? But by the way, I flippin' love that. I just love that whole concept. And the thing that I picture is, I just picture some incredible artwork that really kind of features all of that. That seems really cool.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
what's the condition where you get your senses kind of, is it synesthesia or something like that, where your senses flip or something like that? So let's say,
Yeah.
Is there? I'm not sure if that would be relatable or anything like that. But what I can picture is, like, if you are limited with your vision, your sense of hearing is really, or your sense of smell are really, really amplified, so that you can, that can be a super strength for you, so to speak.
Yeah, so in this game in particular, all of the senses are basically their own skill, and they come in different skill levels. So if you are blind, you can choose which of your other skills or which of your other senses you want to increase. We've had players who prefer to enhance their sense of touch or their sense of smell versus their hearing, just because it's a more... you can take a different approach to things. So, for example, if you're in a burning building, rather than trying to duck and crawl and kind of look your way out, well, first of all, if you're sighted and you're in a burning building that's full of smoke, your sight's not going to do you a lot of good to begin with. So then your sense of touch is a really great way to see, well, is the fire hotter this way or that way? Is this doorknob hot to the touch? Do I need to go another way? And so... it really, the people who've played and provided feedback really seem to think that it's great fun to think outside the box again, to come up with different ways to interact with the world that they wouldn't in like a game like 5th edition, where it's really more about just exploring and thumping things.
Super cool.
Somebody in chat just wanted to know, could you have selective hearing as a disadvantage?
My wife says I do all the time. I don't know why.
Also, I'm going to apologize if anybody heard that car horn. My neighbor's kids are outside playing.
I didn't hear it, so I don't know.
Okay, good. If you didn't hear that car horn, ignore what I just said.
I'm actually working on a tabletop game right now. It's more of a hack, so I don't know if anybody has played Into the Odd before or heard of that system. So I'm working on a hack of that because it's a very hackable system. It's very simple. The rules are easy to understand, and it's pretty easy to tweak with things. So my major influences are like Treasure Planet, Spelljammer. I love Spelljammer. I have a pretty real distaste for the 5th edition Spelljammer books. And I feel like it's kind of like there's just not a lot there. So I've been working on my own setting. So a lot of it's like about like Treasure Planet. You know, you are a space buccaneer. Like, how does that work? Like, what are the forces that create like that as a viable thing? So I kind of looked at history and kind of, you know, it was basically a lot of buccaneers in the world that existed. They were basically like soft forces of other countries. Like they were a way for like Spain and France and Great Britain to mess with each other without like necessarily like sending warships. So that's kind of what I was like, oh, maybe there's like some, you know, galactic empires that need, you know, some pirates to kind of mess with other people. Maybe that's an avenue. So, I mean, I love like straight up adventure stuff and what was it, swashbuckling, the kind of swashbuckling action you would find in something like Eberron, where everything's not quite how it seems. There's always another layer. There's a lot of politics going around. So that's kind of what I definitely prefer in my games. So that's definitely what I'm trying to build into mine.
That's awesome. That's freaking sick.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Tom, Bodhi, what are your take?
It's a hard question. So we have worked on something that is not a role playing game. We love mixed martial arts. We're big fans of mixed martial arts. So we have in the background while we've been doing all of our like D&D and playing all of our TTRPG stuff, we have been working on a tabletop game that involves dice rolling, and it's like strategy based and things like that for an MMA fight basically. And you know, with two people, so you know, go back and forth and do that. There's skills, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that's something that we've done. It's not very much like role play, and there's some. I mean, yeah, if you want to, if you want to be, if
I'm rolling that hot silky floor, dude, I'm talking some.
That's fair. I wouldn't call it role play. I'd just call it shit. But you know, I think, you know, so there's that. But I think if I were to create a system, I'd probably be very similar to Ryan. You know, my homebrew world is a whole setting of sky islands. You know, I'm like, my whole thing is floating islands. Airships is like, you know, we're making a whole Kickstarter about three-dimensional flight mechanics and rules and combat mechanics for this kind of stuff. So I think, you know, I love steampunk. I love, you know, for me, a lot of what I run is like very real stuff. It's very like people dealing with, you know, real life consequences. Like our players have hard arcs where they, you know, even when they do things that they feel were good, it hurts, you know, the outer ecosystem, and you know, there's repercussions to that kind of stuff. So I like it just being like what I kind of for people who are trying to work out what I'm saying, I like Game of Thronesy more, where it's that politics. It's a bit grungier. It's a bit more about who's saying what, you know, the relationships that you have, the people you know, that kind of thing. And so I would probably go somewhere down that route. But I'll be honest with you, I have no intention of making my own system. I personally feel like it's a really saturated industry, especially after the OGL shit that went down. I personally don't feel like I'm going to be able to contribute enough to like create something that people are, do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I've got good creative mind and I'm good with mechanics and whatnot, but I don't feel like anything I create is going to be any better than, you know, what big people like Paizo and, you know, DM Dave and what Critical Role and, you know, all these other like massive entities. Like, to me, I personally feel like it's a superfluous idea for me personally, but that's you know, that's where I'm at. But I respect anyone who is doing it, because like I said, it's so hard with what's out there. And, you know, if you make a system that can be different, but also, you know, crack into that almost like mainstream flow of like what's going on, like, my hat's off to you, dude. Like, that hustle is unbelievable. So anyone who can do that is like, I respect the hell out of you for doing that, you know?
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat in that what I tend to do is go, this is what isn't working for this system. What will solve it. And 99% of the time, it's another system that already exists. Like I've yet to run into a problem for me that hasn't already been solved, or like solved enough that I'm not gonna cross the finish line far like quicker than they are. But Jacob, you raised an interesting point. I'm curious with your system or what you're approaching.
Mm-hmm.
How much of it is whole cloth, and how much of it, or what is the balance of pulling from existing systems, or like Ryan is talking about kind of like hacking into the odd, but how much, Jacob, are you starting from scratch, or even pulling from like board games or other mechanics to build this? Like, what does that recipe look like?
Yeah, so for Survival of the Able, for example, the idea of the trait ladder that you might see in Fudge or Fate is there. Rolling 4 Fudge dice, that's there. And then literally 100% of the game was written from scratch with those concepts in mind. I did borrow liberally from other systems, so there's a quality system like you might find in Pendragon, where you have 2 dichotomous qualities, say pious and worldly, or energetic and sluggish. If one is high, the other has to be low. But I tailored it for the system. I borrow the idea of things like skills, or like a luck mechanic, and then give it another twist. So there's a mechanic called Blessed Dice, where you can pray to your deities, or pray to the patron saints to gain assistance on one of your next rolls, and then you have a pool of dice that you can use at your leisure to decide how many you want to roll to change your fate, basically. So maybe I have a pool of 4 dice, but I only need to use 2 of them right now. That's something that I've sort of woven into my own game designs that I haven't seen in any other system, where you have more of that sort of control over the way that you get die rerolls, right? So in D&D, there's advantage, and it's always you roll twice, take the better. In some systems, you might be able to do a reroll when you spend a token, or a point. But having a pool of dice to choose from to reroll a little bit here or there, depending on what works for you at the time, it's those sorts of things that I like to add to my own game designs, because there's no one system that I've found that does everything right all the way through. And maybe it's just me being anal, but I want to have things the way that I want to have them. And so I'll write them myself. And if it means borrowing, it means borrowing. If it means writing at whole cloth, then I'll do that. But that's just one example of a system that I've written, from the ground up. And there are others that I've written. There are a lot of game design challenges that I've taken part in, where you have to design an entire game in 24 hours. Usually they come out pretty simply, but it's a great way to start playing with other game mechanics, different types of ideas, to just you do things a different way. And I find that just like really liberating to sit down with a basic idea of something and come up with a brand new mechanic for it. If it gets used later in another game, then that's great. If it doesn't, then at least you've practiced the art of game design. And to me, that's half the fun of gaming, is game designing.
That's awesome, man. It's sick to hear your passion about that. Like you can feel it, dude. You can feel it. Yeah, I can hear. Some of us are forever GMs, some of us are players for life. Sounds like you're a game dev.
For sure,
man. Which is absolutely awesome, dude. That's freaking sick.
And it's funny, you touched on something that, like, in my illustration life, I run into a lot, which is, like, personal projects tend to be where I crack stuff that then goes into, like, the client work, or, like, the work that ends up going, like, I end up working through a new texture or, like, color combination in this, like, small little personal project that maybe no one will ever see, but then that then becomes the base of like this thing that I pitch to a client, or like when I have a project where I need to finish this commission, and I go, oh right, I did this 6 months ago on this little thing. I'll open that file and see what I did there, and then translate it. Like
for sure.
It's fun to see in the kind of game design side that kind of iteration than informing the final stuff. Because I'm just used to it in like pictures on a page as opposed to mechanics. So it's very cool to hear.
Yeah, very similar though. Like the number of games that I've designed and have never published, I'm sure I've designed more than I've actually published because it's just one of those hobbies and things that I like to tinker. Some people build characters, some people build homebrew items. I just like design games from scratch.
Love it.
It's
That's
good
cool.
though, because without people like you, the rest of us would have nothing to play.
Exactly.
Yeah, we need everyone.
It's true. It's definitely a team thing. All right, this is probably a great time for us to pause and take a break. So we're going to do that, and then we will come back and answer some more questions. So stick around, and we will see you after the break.
Cool.
Do you love supporting your favorite content creators and want to show them how much you appreciate their work? Look no further than Ko-fi. Ko-fi is the perfect platform for fans to support their favorite creators with a simple one-time payment. With Ko-fi, fans and creators can build a community around their shared passions. So let's talk tabletop role-playing games on Tales from the Tavern. By visiting ko-fi.com/GamerMomLuna, you can help support this stream. Your support is always appreciated. Now, let's go talk about games. Excuse me, to some of our questions. I was eating a snack during break and I half still was swallowing it apparently. All right, let's see. So the next question that we have comes from Matt, who most of us would know as Dungeon Glitch on Twitter.
Oh,
Yeah. And his question is, you never get to play with one of these again. Dungeons or dragons?
Dragons easy. I barely use dragons as it is. They rarely come up in the adventures that I'm in. I have run 2 multi-year, one of them is going on 5-year campaigns. And there was a dragon once because it was out of the abyss and Thumberchod is in the mix. I could have thrown him out. He could have just been something else. He could have been a Hydra or whatever. They're easy to forget.
yeah.
I love.
Go for it, Jacob.
ahead.
No, go,
Oh.
Jacob. Go.
I love dragons so much, but I also love a good dungeon crawl. I think if I had to just not play with one, it would be dragons because I have plenty of dragon memorabilia to keep me happy for the rest of my life.
Did we just
awesome.
become best friends?
I think I contrary to the beginning of our actual play series where I throw my players into one dungeon, I legitimately never use dragons or dungeons ever. I don't think I don't personally like, for me, dungeon crawls for my players that like role playing just they can like bog down a little bit with just like combat and enemies and just problems just constantly, and it sometimes feels like it gets a little bit bogged down with that stuff. And then dragons, dude, I don't like D&D dragons, man. I don't like that these dudes are talking to you and that they're dicks. Like, I'm just not about that, man. I'm all about like how to train your dragons. If I'm doing dragons, that's where I'm going with dragons. I'm not doing talking, transforming like freaking giant all-seeing, all-knowing creatures, man. I don't have time for that.
Yeah, I think I'd probably lose dragons. Like, I think, and I also like the idea of dungeons. I mean, I guess what we're calling a dungeon is just like anything I would do a dungeon crawl in. So, like, I prefer caves. I like going into a decrepit mansion. Like, I like that, like, mode of play. And I would hate to lose that more than I would hate to lose. Like, there are, like, what Ryan was saying, like, you could throw another creature that still is, like, big, intimidating, and dangerous. Like, that's essentially what a dragon is to me, at least.
Yeah.
And you could still like throw a bunch of treasure underneath it. Like, you could do a bunch of stuff. Like, I don't know, a giant monkey that hoards treasure. Like, I'm fine with that kind of great or hack it. Like, it's still the same spirit of play. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But I do like when Bodhi is saying losing both of them. I picture you just having a book that just has like the ampersand on it. Like, both words.
And question mark?
Redacted either side.
Yeah.
That's when Ryan busts out tunnels and trolls.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Got the tunnels
Andrew,
and
didn't you just describe King Kong though, basically?
I suppose so. Yeah, Skull Island would be a great setting.
It would be.
Yes, and I'm
And a
making a note of that.
formidable opponent to any dragon, wouldn't it? Well,
Yeah,
in some ways.
absolutely. Yeah. And then I guess, but although I guess you lose the dungeon in that setting too, that'd be more of like I would go more like a hex crawl with that island, but
Yeah, scroll, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
very nice.
I think for me, I'll be controversial and say that I don't care about either of them that much. But I think if I had to choose, I'd probably dump the dragons. But I'm not. I guess it. So this question's pretty diagnostic, isn't it? Like what your preferences are, what your stylistic preferences are, game wise. Because I think more. I just love role playing, and it doesn't really matter what the setting is. So if it could be modern, it could be in the past, it could be fantasy, it could be with monsters, it could be whatever. It's just the interaction, usually between PCs at the table. That's the thing that's gets me off. So, yeah.
do you find though that the setting informs some of that role play? Like I say that as so essentially the two books that I've written. One is more like an untamed, like a wild island, and the other is more of like an urban, like a developed city. And I find even though it's the same group of players, and while they are playing different characters, they tend to approach their role play differently because they're just coming up against different challenges. Like, I guess you're saying you enjoy role play, but do you find you enjoy a certain setting more than another, or a certain type of role play more than another, like a survival role play versus a political role play?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah. So I give you a question back in a second, which is basically about like when your players are approaching those different settings differently. How is that different? Like, is it characteristically they're coming across differently with different accents or that type of thing, or gestures, or is it more of a deeper shift? For me, I do like we're playing an Orbital Blues game right now that is just
Orbital Blues.
Oh,
So
dude!
good.
Can I just say?
Good.
Can I just shout out Orbital Blues to anyone who
So
hasn't played?
great.
The balance in that game, I just love it. So the point of the reason I brought it up though is that it is just literally a bunch of like down and out characters that are always up against it and always, and certainly in our game.
My setting is very Cowboy Bebop-esque in that everyone is just
Yes.
losing constantly. There's no winners anywhere at any point.
Yeah.
That's not what it's about. So yeah.
So I definitely like to be like the the outcast character that has a little bit roguish and just up against it the whole time. I don't really kind of identify too much with the hero. Maybe I try to do that in real life as much as I can, so that like in my role playing life, I try to be like kind of the roguey, don't give a crap kind of character. That's what I like. But yeah.
You like to play wounded characters. Tom plays a lot of wounded characters, like a lot of characters who, are either struggling with something in their past, or dealing with something that ails them in the moment, things like that. But I'd say, across a lot of them, you don't like to play characters that have it easy. You're not a Legolas who's walking on top of the snow while everyone else is trudging through the snow. You're like a Gimli that's like head high in the snow, like struggling. That's what you're all about.
I think it's also just adds a bit of variety to the traditional arc of a character. So yeah, but so I was going to follow back up with you, Andrew. What is the subtle difference that you're seeing with how your players approach the different settings?
So, I mean, you're right in that they're playing different characters, and maybe this is just the nature of the players that I'm playing with. But in Neverland, where it's more survival based, and they're kind of like in this wild space, which is like settled in some pockets, but not in others. I find they're trying to like not maintain the status quo, but kind of like almost like protect the setting in a way, or trying to like navigate survival as much as they are trying to navigate some kind of like social politics. in contrast to Oz being more of a highly developed space, like an urban space, I find the role play tends to be more like class based, where they are going, oh, because there is this like upper echelon, we have our own problems, but we also really want to work against this. And again, maybe those are the players bringing their own stuff to it, but I think the nature of the setting is changing their priorities, even if their character priorities are still like surviving and getting enough, like having enough resources, whether it's like money or like literally like food and fire. Like they're still focused on like keeping their characters alive. I guess that's the core thrust, but I think that extra layer, that layer below that, like once, maybe it's the hierarchy of needs, like once they've kind of got those base needs met, then their priorities shifted based on where they are, at least as they're role playing their characters. So that's what I see. But it's also something I haven't really specifically thought about. So I wonder if I spent more time now analyzing each session, if I'd tease out more.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, the hierarchy of needs, because you can set the setting up so that wherever you feel is the priority of that need. So if it's just basic survival, then that's going to be a different approach. But if that has been accomplished in a different setting, then it could be about politics and about having self-esteem and all this other stuff. So it's really interesting.
I mean, it's classic RPG. As game dev, and you guys all working with it. It's classic RPG shit. It's you give them a quest, you give them the main quest, and you're like, cool, you can follow that if you want, and then you start filtering in all these other little things that happen as they meet people and alliances that they can make and people that are messing with them and all that kind of stuff. And it becomes that hierarchy of needs where it's like, okay, cool. Right now we need a battery because that battery is going to get us one step closer to being able to get our ship going again, which we need to then capture this guy who has, and it becomes that whole line of like, cool, how do we get back to that core mission? But it's like, cool, we need to work out what we need to do in the interim to do it. And I would say that the whole, it comes also down, I think, to acting principles, Andrew, of like super objectives and objectives of a character. Do you know what I mean? You have objectives for, a scene or a moment in a game. You have objectives for, maybe relationships with those people. And then your character has their core super objective, that might change or whatnot. But it's the thing that drives the first question or the last question is always, cool, how does that sit with, what I'm really, wanting to do and whatnot. So I think, like you said, in a lot of cases, setting can dictate what those are based on, what kind of struggles or what things people might be facing or wanting to overcome or, succeed at or whatever it might be, in those settings. So I totally agree with you. And I think settings affect the role play massively, but I think, I just agree. I agree.
But to Tom's point, I think if your focus is still on role play, I think the setting doesn't necessarily matter. It's just that you are role playing about different things. Like I still appreciate that a role play driven player is going to find the role play, whether it is survival horror or like high fantasy. It's just kind of like finding the joy wherever you can.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that one?
No, it's an interesting conversation.
I know. All right. So I'm gonna throw a question out there, so for people who weren't here last month and didn't hear and are not familiar, one of the moderators that I had for my channel for a very long time, loved the stream very much. Passed away unexpectedly back in February. And so I'm going to ask a question in his honor because it was his favorite one to ask. And his favorite question to ask was, tell us your best natural 20 story or your best natural 1 story.
I've got some good natural 1 stories, but I think my favorite was in a game of Pathfinder where it was a published module, but I can't remember the name of it. We were in Fairyland or in the Fey realm, assaulting some kind of Fey castle, and my character, I was playing a summoner at the time, and instead of going in through the front door, I decided I'm going to cast spider climb and crawl up the outside wall and go in a window. So as I'm on my way up, an invisible fairy pops up and like casts grease on me. Uh, I did manage to save on the grease spell, so I was able to get into the window. But then when I get into the room, I spot something that I wasn't supposed to see. And so this guy casts charm on me, and I failed that save. And as a summoner, I had a pretty decent will save. But the nat one, that trumps it. So he says, come with me. And I was given another save to resist because it was something that I wasn't supposed to be doing. And I failed that save with another nat one. And so by the time all was said and done, I had rolled like 3 nat ones in a row and was following this fae person down into the throne room of this castle that we were not supposed to have given away our position. And suddenly I was somewhat enthralled to the fairy queen. We did bypass half of the adventure because I went in the wrong way and we found the back door. But I had to kind of wait for my party to rescue me because I'd gone missing all of a sudden. So one of those times where a series of natural ones can lead to some really different ways of doing things. It ended up working out in the end because we bypassed a lot of the challenges that we may have otherwise faced if we had gone in the front door. But my character ended up almost dead at one point because of it.
Well, that's great because that also sets up like a whole arc that you could do because you could be like a Manchurian candidate now, completely brainwiped, and like all of a sudden you hear somebody whisper like ketchup, and all of a sudden just daggers and swords out. You just start knifing everybody. So as a GM, it would be frustrating to lose that much of an adventure, but it would also be very exciting to have that opportunity just to be like, I'm going to drop this on the party like a million bricks in like 6 months from now.
What's yours, Ryan?
So this didn't happen to me. It's one of my players. So this is a 5e campaign, Tome of Annihilation, and he's an orc. He's like really into the orc side of thing, worshiper of Grooms. I gave him a kind of like a legendary weapon ish that was like going to grow with him. So I put a couple of timers on it. It's like it's going to advance into the next level of what it could be if he does like 5 natural 20s. I think that's going to be some amount of time. He's had it for maybe a month or two. They get to this they're fighting a bunch of like pirates. They go to this like pirate cove and they start fighting pirates. He gets we're playing on roll 20. He doesn't get like 5 crits in one like game, but he got several like double 20s with like, every time if he was rolling with advantage 20. So like at the end of it, like he just massacred him. He's a barbarian who's like running roughshod all over all of these like relatively low level pirates. So finally I'm just like, all right, like in the middle of it, after his 5th natural 20, it's like, oh, something happens with your axe. It starts to like grow and it becomes weird and all this other stuff. He's like, oh, I hit with it, and he, of course, another natural 20. So there's like some mid-level boss that was supposed to be kind of, he wasn't a beholder, but he had the powers of beholder. He had like a beholder under his eye patch. He had like this crystal eye that gave him beholder powers. So he was supposed to kind of like mess with them and get away. Just pink misted, just immediately destroyed. I want to say he did some god-awful number of hundreds of points of damage in that. And like everybody else was like really worried because there was maybe 50 pirates on like all over the place that were like in the mix, like in this battle, and he just started cleaving through. So like they were just dropping like flies, and I started rolling checks because obviously that'd be terrifying. I roll a nat 1 on the checks for like to see if they stay, and like have a bunch of them immediately like drop weapons and just like give up. But that was a lot of fun just seeing that happen. I mean, it was a little early for them to get like have a +2 weapon, but it was, I mean, he earned it. Like, I'm a kind of person, if I set like an idea, it's like I'm not going to shortchange the players. Like, if he got 5 nat 20s, he's going to get the next stage of it. But that was a lot of fun. It was just really fun to see that happen because like every time he got a nat 20, everybody got more and more excited, and it just kept on happening.
it gets infectious on the table. I've never seen a double
For
nat
sure.
20 on roll 20. I've never, not a single time ever. That's
I've
sick.
gotten I've gotten some double nap once. It's
It
rough.
does remind me that one of the early rules I learned, which was if I ever put someone somewhere that needs to escape, they won't escape. Like I could put in however many fail safes I assume will work, and they still have some sort of solution. Because they found a ship full of butter, they just decide, because we've got this, we're gonna stop their escape. But I don't have a specific natural 1 or natural 20 story, except I mean, like on its own, it's not that exciting, but. I have a group that even in different campaigns, I've given them enough boxes that are locked that need to have like not even just like roll over 20, but literally they need to roll a 20 to unlock the box, and assume that it will take a while, or they'll go through a bunch of tools and it'll break, and inevitably it's always the first try that they pop it open and go, and they don't know how exciting that is because they just did it, so they're just ready to reap the rewards without realizing that if we hadn't rolled this, it would have there would have been consequences. So they're just like I don't know, cruising through life on easy street, not knowing how good they have it.
Little do they know it's a Hellraiser, like Pueblo cubes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. Next time we'll leave a smaller box inside that box, but yeah, for now that's it. What about you two?
Mine was super basic. It was we were actually in a dungeon, and
It was our first ever D&D campaign.
it was our first campaign in a dungeon, and looking to try to get down to a dark hallway that something was down in there. So I had a bright idea of throwing a rock that would illuminate once it got down into the hallway, and so everyone was really like, let's do that. That's
cast a light, throw the rock.
Yeah.
Good idea.
So, and of course I'm going to pick as opposed to the hero journey, I'm going to pick a little bit more of a spicier experience. So I roll a nat 1. So I throw the rock. Bodhi says it hits against the wall and it comes back and hits you in the head. Boom. Okay. So then we come back around to like everyone's doing their thing again. It's my turn again. I'm throwing the rock again. Everyone's like, "Are you sure, Tom? Do you really want to maybe we do a different strategy?" I'm like, "Nope. I'm not. What's the chances?" Throw it again. Another nat 1. Bodhi says it hits the wall and now it cuts you as it knocks you on the ground. And I'm like, okay, well that sucks as well. So that's twice now, and everyone's like, okay. We're not throwing any more rocks, Tom. This is done now. So comes back around again, and I'm like, I'm thinking peer pressure. You know how sometimes you just want to go against peer pressure, whether it makes sense or not. And I'm like, guys, look, I know you're gonna hate me, but I'm throwing this flipping rock again because the chance, I can throw rocks. I can throw them down a hallway. It's not hard to do. I can do this. Third nat 1.
Oh my god.
I get rendered unconscious and.
Bludgeoning.
So
Tom,
funny.
a level 3 wizard, just putting himself unconscious with rock throws. I was like, yeah, that was worth it.
That's amazing.
That was really
To the
good.
utter dismay of the table, they were just disgusted.
It was hilarious. Yeah. I think for me, I want to say as a GM, I feel so fortunate because not only do I get to live my nat 20s and my nat 1s, I get to live my parties nat 1s and nat 20s, and for me, look, I'll be honest with you, me rolling nat 1s and me being like, hey guys, I rolled a nat 1 behind my screen or behind the computer kind of thing is great, but there's nothing more exciting than when your players get nat 20s and they just go off the chain and everyone's super happy. That kind of just fills my hate fire in my soul for killing them. No, I actually, so I have countless that I could use that are some of my absolute favorites. But one, it relates back to the item that I mentioned earlier, the pen it's called the one pen to rule them all, because it turns into a mole. And thank you. And so he essentially has this pen with him, and our party are in a water reservoir. So in my world of floating islands, water is a commodity up here. It's something that only the rich really have, and the poor are kind of not really given much of, basically, because of this oppressive power that kind of lives there. And these guys have joined with some local vigilantes, and they're going to go rob a water reservoir, as well as break out a young half-elf gentleman who's in the like prison cells there, basically, because he's being falsely accused of something. So they go in and they split the team. One half is still in the water, one half is going down to get the kid out the brig, and the team that went into to save the kid was just two characters. It was our dog folk person and our half orc, and they went in, and the half orc, who is our barbarian, strongest, meant to be, he's got this whole backstory that he's like a pugilist in his spare time, all this, and our dog person, who's my mum, just absolutely comes in with her bow and just starts rinsing dudes, like one-shotting people with like just ridiculous amounts of damage. She's, being a total min-maxer and putting all her abilities together and just like absolutely rinsing these guys. So she comes out and just like takes out a few, and then he basically just runs, doesn't hit a single person. He's like, I want to smash through the gate that then leads to the cells. Rolls a nat 20 to get through the gate. So I'm like, you just rip this chain link fence apart. And then he's like, I'm going to ram the pen in the lock of the prison cell and bust it open by clicking it. He'd never done that up until this point, so that blew my mind. And I was like, I'm going to roll something to see how well this lock withstands this at least. And I got him to roll it, and then he got another nat 20. So I was like, okay,
wow.
cool. I was like, cool. You smash it open. It's all good. You guys are... and they basically got out of there, both of them completely unharmed, and the biggest, most powerful player on our team didn't harm a single person in the reservoir, which was...
And Tracy wiped everyone else.
Tracy wiped everyone else. Yeah, it was just those two nat 20s. It was just a great story moment, like they spring their trap, arrows are flying, he's like rushing through, smashes through, saves the kid. It was just a nice moment that was one that I remember and really appreciated.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Luna?
Oh gosh. Let's see. Well, okay, so this didn't actually happen to me, but it happened to an NPC that we were fighting who rolled a natural 1. And we were playing a Pathfinder First Edition game, and the DM was using like a crit fail table and a crit success table. So every time you'd roll a 1, he'd be like, okay, roll a d20 to see what happens and that sort of thing. And the NPC that we were fighting ended up putting this very nicely, punching himself in the groin and stunning himself for 4 rounds. And
Happens.
Classic.
It was...
That's about accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna take your word on that one, but
I don't know, 4 rounds seems a little low.
Yeah, I need a full minute. I think it's more accurate.
But it was the whole circumstance around it. It was just like the timing of it and the way it all happened. Like it just was so funny. I mean, like just talking about that alone is funny, but like, the whole circumstance. We were just like. So that happened, and the entire party's like, well, guess that fight's over. And we just ran out of the room because we're like, what's he going to do? Follow us? I mean...
Just rolling on the ground.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. And I think one of the best nat 20s I ever rolled, same game, actually, but my character, she was this little Spitfire, and she... they were up, so there was an attack on the city that they were in, and she was up on like the ramparts over one of the gates coming in, and the enemies, I don't know how, but somehow had like a troll or an ogre, I can't remember which it was now, and so she decides to like cannonball off the ramparts with her short sword out and try to land on that, because she's a halfling, try to land on the head of the ogre and stab it while going down, and she did. And it was probably one of the most epic things. Like that whole game for me was sort of this experimenting and trying new things and sort of like role playing out my actions, not just like I swing again, It was really the first time that I got sort of into the RP of a fight, and And so it was really exciting for me, both as a player and for my character, because she very easily could have gotten stepped on and killed, but didn't. And so I think that those two things for me were pretty epically hilarious and fun in different ways. But yeah.
Do you know what? I want to just touch on something there, because it's something that I feel like is under talked about in D&D, and people always go, oh, my combat's really clunky, or like my players aren't enjoying combat because everyone's taking turns and things like that. Combat art, like RP, is so important for like good combat. Like one, people describe your stuff, but like we kind of have an unspoken rule, which is like every turn, move your character and say something. What battle do you know where someone is stood still for multiple like chunks of time? Like if you've seen any fight, people are moving their footwork, they're moving around, they're circling people, Even if you're still in the threatening space and you're just moving around them in a freaking circle like this, it still makes more sense than standing still. So if you're struggling with that, like use that RP. It's such a weapon, man. It's such a tool in that.
I would even say like you can inject RP even if it's not your turn. Just talking to someone, certainly not advising them or anything like that, but like in that moment, that's going down. If it's not my turn and someone wants to interact with me, I'm going to interact with them, or I might shoot some
a one line back or something.
Yeah, something just to kind of keep the whole. Of course, combat is super linear and can really get bogged down, especially if someone is like Tracy, my wife Bodhi's mom, is very mini-maxing. So she's into her rules and into like really trying to maximize her turn. So if there's too much of that, then it can really, really get bogged down. But if you're, the other thing is like, what are we doing? Like, we're, as a table, we're trying to experience something that has some drama, has some excitement, has some like real consequences that we can feel. It's not just numbers, it's something that we can feel, right? So if we get bogged down in just the mechanics of it, it can get really kind of stale a little bit as well. So yeah, it's something we really try to work on, because I think that's one of the real liabilities of D&D as a game, is the combat can get really, really, kind of clunky
for sure. Well, I just want to say I appreciate what you just said just then, Luna. I think that's super awesome that you made that step and evolved your game in that way. That's super sick. I love that, and respect anyone who's, and don't get me wrong, like I'm saying this stuff, with the assumption that you're comfortable to possibly take that step. It's something that, if you're not comfortable with, it takes time. You got to build up to it. But, when you are ready to take that step, it's so worth it, man. And you see it with all new players all the time. The first time they're like, wait, can I say this? And you're like, yeah, say it.
Yeah.
Go, do your thing. Like, just talk. And, and like, it starts to unlock. And so, like, you can find it. But I just really appreciated that story, Luna. I feel like it's something that people don't talk about. But yeah.
Oh, I completely agree. And I think it's really easy. Like, I lucked out in that I had a party that was willing to kind of like play around with stuff like that. I think it's really easy to fall into I swing my sword and I take 3 steps this way and that sort of thing. If you don't have if you're not playing with people who regularly are also RPing what their character is doing in a fight, I lucked out that this particular character in this game, there was another character who was like, so like I said, my character was a halfling. There was another character who was like a 7-foot tall barbarian, and the two of them, for whatever reason, the two characters really clicked and really got along well. And so they spent a lot of time sort of off camera training together. And so what they did was there'd be times when the other character's name was Gunner, and we'd be in a fight and my character would go, Gunner, shield, and he'd plant a shield and she would run and like jump off it and then like come down
Super
on
cool.
like this. People started referring, my character's name was Eata Bricks. People started calling her Yeeta Bricks. And, that sort of became their thing, was like, she would figure out how to use his size to her advantage in a
Love it.
fight. And
Mhm.
you know, I remember the first time she, you know, I used her in a way like that, and I was like, holy crap, this was mind-blowing. You know, like all of a sudden having the ability to do stuff like that in a game. So yeah. It's definitely worth talking about with your table, I think, to, you know, ask people like, what's your comfort level with RPing, and are you willing to try it if you never have, and how do you want to, you know, I think it
Yeah.
can really add a lot to the story, and it can really, in a weird, it's going to sound kind of weird to say it, but it can help sort of with character development in that way, because you start to understand like, how are they going to think in combat? How do they move? Why does this decision when they level up make a tactical advantage for them, you know, in their, you know, when they start fighting again, and that sort of thing? You know, would it make sense for them to have this if you're going to play them a certain way in a fight? Does it make sense for them to take this kind of spell or this feat or this, you know, whatever it might be? So yeah.
Good point. I think so. With combat and RP, I've had plenty of DMs in the past who've been like, "Well, you can't do that because the game mechanics don't really support it." Right?
Yeah.
Like, but there's this one DM that I had who, like, his whole tagline was, "Of course you can, you're a hero," and that really just liberated the players. Like, can I jump up and do a backflip and attack this guy from behind? He's like, "Of course you can, you're a hero." Can I swing from that chandelier? Yeah, you're a hero. Go for it. That was the most liberating time that I've ever spent with the GM, because it just meant, like, you could see people's wheels turning and clicking, and, well, how can I make combat more fun? Because the game mechanics are getting out of the way now.
Yeah.
And I think as a DM, we can do that for our players by just opening up that space. And, you know, even if the game mechanics don't support it, or it seems like it wouldn't be very logical, we cast spells. Like,
Right. Yeah.
in a world where magic happens, physics don't really matter. So let them do it.
90% of the stuff that players want to do is purely cosmetic anyway. It's, can I, you know, I want to do 30 foot of movement, but can I do a sick backflip while I do it? It's like, if there's a certain like stage as a DM or a GM that can seem scary, it's like, well, what if I say yes, and then they're going to try and use that for something else, and then there's this whole cascading thing that'll happen, and all of a sudden I don't know what's happening anymore. But in reality, they're just like, they just want to add that flair, make it personal, and like it's the same thing for like weapons. I think 90% of the stuff that players want, there's like, can this sword look like this, even though that doesn't technically exist in 5e, or can it be like, you know, can it be a samurai sword, or can it be this kind of whatever weapon? It's like, there's always, just let them do it. It's like, as long as it doesn't affect the rules in any, like, even if it does affect the rules, as long as it's not like, you know, it does like 5d10 and instead of just a d10 now, it doesn't break anything.
Well, that's the thing. You just said, you know, you make a point where you're like, can I do a backflip when, you know, I go to move? Well, yeah, because odds are your backflip is going to be the same distance or shorter than your movement, you know.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I got in an argument with some people. It was like kind of a TikTok thing where I was basically talking about, like, you can reskin like spells, like you can reskin them. Like, say you want your flames to be purple, or instead of fire damage, you wanted to do ice damage, or X, Y, and Z. I got so many comments from like people online being like, well, you can't do it with the balance. I was like, it doesn't matter. Balance doesn't matter.
Yeah.
D&D 5e is not a balanced game anyway. There's like, once you've reached like level 10, all semblance of balance just is out the window.
Yeah.
Once you realize,
and they're like, go ahead.
No, sorry, go, continue.
Because their main argument is like, you can't change a fire spell. The reason the fire spell, like Fireball, does so much damage because it's the most resisted type of fire, you know, damage. Like, a bunch of things that means nothing to the goblin. That means nothing to 90% of all of the creatures in Dungeons and Dragons that aren't immune to like fire damage. So what does it matter if it's fire or cold? It's like 90% of the time.
And do you know what as well? Like, when you realize that dwarves in D&D have a 5-foot vertical based on D&D jumping rules, it's like they're jumping higher than every NBA player ever. Just context that. For dwarves can jump higher than every NBA player ever. So we're already in the realm of freaking ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? But like, one of my favorite things that, and you know, this is because we love MMA and we love martial arts and like fighting and stuff. I think as well, like if your world is not like Avengers Marvel level of like, you know, high fantasy kind of situation where everyone is, you know, combining magical powers to bring down the, you know, if you got some people like hand fighting and stuff, I try and think about like as well, like realistically in a fight, if you like stab someone or you like shoot them with an arrow or, you know, you punch them really freaking hard, I'm like, there's times where I'm like, man, D&D mechanics don't account for the fact if you walk up behind someone and like slash their neck, it's like, oh, that's a 1d4 damage, and oh, he turns around and sees you now and alerts everyone because that's how this game works. And it's like, no. Like, there's moments like that where it's like, cool, if you're gonna walk up behind someone and cut their throat, it doesn't matter how many HP they have. It just does not matter. Like, they're dead. They will die very slowly in the next like couple of minutes. You know what I mean? So, like, knocking people over, like I'm like, if you kick someone, surely they move back like a couple of feet, surely. Like, come on now. So that's one of the things that definitely bothers me.
I think the other thing, I think one of the things that you do that kind of tries to balance things is, so if someone wants to do something that is over and above what would be accepted. So someone does want to do the parkour off of the wall and jump on a ledge and then do a backflip. You'll typically say, sure, let's do it, but let's roll for it. And you're going to add a little bit of like, you know, they're going to need to roll something decent to pull that off, so that it's possible. Just like in theory, in our world, it would be possible. I'm 56. It would be possible to do the parkour off of that wall and then like land on one foot and then do a bit of a, you know, a forward jump. I guess I could.
It's a DC 25 roll for you, Tom. DC 25 roll for you, Tom.
Exactly. So you can kind of balance you can kind of allow it, but make it a satisfying reward if they actually nail the role as well. So then it becomes, it's not just like, oh yeah, I'll allow it, and then to your point, Ryan, it becomes a slippery slope. Okay, well now you're going to allow anything, so I'm going to do a triple backflip now. You know,
like people try shit and fail all the time. Yeah. What we're all here doing all the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, my whole thing has always been, I'll allow it, but that also means that they're going to try to do that to you. Like, so the person who's like, I sneak up behind them and slit their throat, I'm like, yes, absolutely, but if someone gets behind you and does that, like when you're unarmed, then that's it. So, I mean, I always do, but then that also then they become extra paranoid. Like whenever they rest, they set a million alarms.
My neck guard 3000.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like back to the wall just the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, shuffling.
And I do the same with like I think they've been called like called shots. Like, oh, I'm fighting this creature, I want to shoot and aim for the eye. So like their armor is maybe 16, but if you want to hit the eye, it's like 23 or whatever, right? Like do something like that. But then I also have the enemies go, okay, they're going to try to like cut off your hand, so what is your armor? Okay, they only rolled a 17, so it's fine, but that also adds the level of danger of just like, if you're going to ratchet it up, then they're going to match it. And to Ryan's point of balance, I've never been interested in balance. I think it's far more fun when either they think they're in for a big fight and they mop the floor with them, or they think they're going to mop the floor with them, and then the first hit does a 32 hit, and they go, oh, we gotta go. And it's fun. Like, I think that's the fun story. Like, I think the perfectly balanced campaign or adventure rarely leaves opportunity or space for those memorable moments, because it's like it's played safe. And I think I don't know, I think when the creature bites off the arm, that's memorable. Like, that goes, oh, now we got to get that arm back or kill that thing to get go from there.
I think that's one of the reasons why for a lot of people, their battles are slogs. They spend way too much time trying to make it, it's like, well, it's evenly balanced. This is a tit for tat. And when it's tit for tat, like, it just becomes whittling down each other's health until one side remains. And that takes forever.
Right.
Such a good point.
So,
because then it becomes, if the enemy is really overpowered. So Jacob, you're mentioning a fairy queen. So my one group fought a fairy queen because they thought that was their only option, and I don't think it was, but it was not meant. It was never going to be balanced. So now what they're working on is like they escaped. That was fine. That like does a 32 hit completely applied, and they went, oh, we've screwed up. But now their approach is not, we need to level up. Their approach is, what advantage can we get so we can go back in like a week or two to level the playing field? Like, yeah, she had a bunch of guards. How do we cut off the guards? Or how do we also then limit her so she can't hit us with a 32. She just can't hit us. And I think that's far more interesting than just the what's on my character sheet solution. So yeah, balance is boring in my opinion.
Oh, you're making me feel so much better about those items I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, balance is overrated. It's also an illusion.
I agree.
It's an absolute illusion, and like nobody ever goes home and tells their friends like, "Hey, I had the most balanced game of Dungeons and Dragons last night." They're like, "Oh, I had the greatest game. Like we did this, that, and the third." Or it's like, "Oh, we got completely wrecked." Like they never go home bragging about the just beautiful balance of that giant encounter they had.
That was
last
the
night.
nice, most mellow, balanced game I've ever played.
Also, there's no standardized playtesting, like, formula for this shit. Like, the people who are playtesting this are going, yeah, it feels right. Yeah, what do you think, Chris? Yeah, it feels good to me. Like that's
Chris is in Perkins.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're just having general conversations. Like, there's probably deeper metrics to it, but when you really think about it, it's people's opinion. At the like you said, some people are like, the fireball is, you can't change that. That's cool. If that's your opinion, cool. Then in your world, fireball is always fireball, and it's never ice bowl or acid bowl or smoke bowl or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? And that's totally fine.
Yeah.
That's totally cool. Do your thing. But I think, yeah, man, you open it up and I've got to say, Andrew, I love what you said about you. Whatever your players give to you, you got to dish it right back to them and make them realize that the world bites back, baby. The world bites back. This is not just a walk in the park.
Because the 32 hit is the big thing. It's the eye-opening, like, oh shit, what did we just walk into?
Right.
Moment, right?
And I try to telegraph it. Like, there's no. I mean, like, I don't want to say there's no surprise, but like, you walk into the Queen's Court. She's got a bunch of guards around. Like, this is telegraphing like big boss battle setting that you've decided to then attack her during a ball. So like, this is fine. Like, you've chosen to do this, and I think the lack of balance is also paired with clear communication. Like, I try to make it very clear that, like, you're walking in this cave and then you see a bunch of bones and a bunch of like broken armor. Do you want to continue? Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna put on some of that armor. Cool. And I'm walking around.
That was really nice.
Yeah.
That kind of good.
Yeah. So then by the time you get into the like 6 glowing eyes that you can only see in the dark, like that's all there is. Then it's like, oh, maybe that was a sign back there of what was happening. Like, this is our fault. I try to make sure that my players never feel tricked into getting killed. Like, I think I try to play it as fair as possible.
D&D players are literally that friend that we all have that gets into relationships and doesn't see the red flags that everyone else can see around them, and is like, I'm trying to tell you this, but you're just not seeing it. And you're like, okay, well, here we are. This is on you guys.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are just under the 5-minute left mark, believe it or not. So I want to give everybody a chance to go around again and just remind us of who you are, where people can find you around the internet, anything you have coming up that you want to share, or anything else that you would like to mention briefly. So we're going to go in the reverse order of when we started. So we're going to start with you this time, Andrew.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so my name is Andrew Kolb. Kolb is neat, most places online, like neat, like tidy. And I illustrated and wrote an Oz and Neverland setting book for 5e, but also like relatively system agnostic. One is not a dungeon crawl. One is a hex crawl, and one is a point crawl. So there we go. And that's what I got so far. Thank you. Oh yeah, thank you. Oh, I appreciate
We're showing them off for you.
This is lovely.
Visual plugs are powerful.
Yes, and I appreciate
Beautiful books, absolutely.
Yeah, they
thanks.
really are
Thank you.
very cool.
Thank you. Lots of fun to do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and hanging out tonight. It was really great to get a chance to chat.
My pleasure. This has been great.
Yeah. Jacob.
Yeah, so my name is Jacob Wood. I'm the owner of Accessible Games. You can find me on Twitter at Accessible Games, or my website www.accessiblegames.biz. That's .biz or biz. You can also find my zine, Accessible Gaming Quarterly, at accessiblegamingzine.com. And thank you so much for having me here. It's
Yeah,
been a
thank
blast.
you for coming on. It was great to finally get a chance to connect. Jacob and I had been emailing back and forth for a little while, so it was nice to. It's always nice when I can put a face to people's email addresses and and Twitter handles and that kind of thing. So thank you, Tom and Bodie.
Go for it.
So I'm Tom. I'm the father of Homie and the Dude. We are at Homie and the Dude everywhere. Somehow that was not very popular for other people to take down. I don't know why.
Still not very popular. I'm Bodie, the son half of Homie and the Dude. We do TTRPGs and MMA. If you enjoy any of that, come check us out. And we've got our upcoming Sky Zephyrs Kickstarter. We're going to change the game for vehicles in 5e, I promise you guys. So come check that out. Other than that, Luna, thank you so much. You guys are freaking all legends.
super
and
fun.
appreciate all of your perspectives and. You know, it's just been a great time chatting to all you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming back,
Thank
and
you.
I'm sure it's fairly late where you are right now, so I appreciate the extra hours in your day to come and hang out with us tonight.
It's all
Pleasure.
good. It's
I
all
have
good.
I have one quick follow-up question for you. Which one of you is homie and which one is the dude?
You're never gonna know. Actually,
Go for
actually, it is seated in one of our. I don't know if it's a podcast.
one of our earliest videos. We
Yeah.
mention it. If
So-
All
people
right, so there you go. You got to go
wanna
back
check
and
it
look it
out.
up, everybody, if you want to know.
Yeah.
And Ryan.
Yeah, so I am at DMG_run or the reverse of that, run_DMG on most platforms. I think I'm on pretty much everything at this point. I make, Dungeons and Dragons, tabletop RPG memes and different little funny things. Just hot off of running some charity stuff. So if you want to support the charity, it's basically over, but still maybe got a few more things. I've a cake to eat at some point, so keep tuned for that. But yeah, and this was so much fun, Luna. I have so much fun every time I come on Tales from the Tavern. It's always a blast. It's always great meeting new people, and y'all were just absolutely amazing. I just want to thank everybody for
Agreed.
being so great.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Ryan, thanks so much for coming on and hanging out. It was great to get a chance to catch up with you again and
It's been a
hear
minute.
more about what you've been up to lately. So awesome. I am still Gamer Mom Luna, and this has been Tales from the Tavern. We're here the first Sunday of every month, except next month, which is an extra special month because we are doing the Extra Life Charity Stream Weekend Extravaganza, year number 3 for that next month. So that will be the weekend following the Independence Day holiday. So we'll be doing that from July 7th through July 9th. Starting July 7th, we will have a D&D game that Friday night streaming live. Then let's see, we'll have 3 games on Saturday, 2 D&D games, and 1 that will be Aether and Steamworks. And then Sunday the 9th, we will have a Cypher game that will start at 11 in the morning that day. And then we'll wrap it up in the evening with a very, very fun group of people on Tales from the Tavern. So we'll have 2 episodes next month, both the first and second weekend of July. So hopefully you'll stop by for that and check it out. Our goal this year, our first year was 2021. We raised just over $1,000. 2022, year 2, we raised just over $2,000. So we figured why not up it again and go for year number 3 and try to raise $3,000. So,
Nice.
so let's see if we can do that this year. That would be pretty darn epic. And we've got some really awesome tables coming together for you all. Dungeon Glitch in chat. He's going to be DMing one of the 5e games that weekend.
Oh, yeah.
B. Dave Walters is going to be stopping by for Tales from the Tavern that weekend. It's going to be good. It's going to be a lot of fun. So looking forward to seeing you all next month. You can stay tuned on all the Extra Life stuff on Twitter. I'll be posting stuff about that pretty soon. We are looking to still fill a few seats in some of the games. If anybody's interested, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we're going to drop a raid to Midwest Miniature Guy. If you don't know him, he paints minis and is fabulous at it. So we're going to go see him now, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of your weekend.
I should go.
Have a great night, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, bye, everybody.
Later. Bye-bye.